I promised I would make a quick video about how to make something useful in Blender, so I will do that now. Apologies if it's a bit rushed. I've got no script, I haven't really thought about it. I'm just trying to do it as quickly as I can, so it's helpful. And if I look from side to side, that's because I've got a few screens in front of me and I'm not quite sure where to look half the time. So anyway, to Blender. You should have this installed on your computer by now. And the first thing to do, let's start a new project. Go into File and General. And let me just make sure you can actually see Blender now. Oh. That's the first thing. So there we go. You should now see Blender. So to File, New, like anything else. And you want a general file. And when you open this up, you will be presented with a cube, usually, and you can rotate around the cube by holding in the middle mouse button, scrolling left and right, zooms in and out, holding the shift button and the left and the middle mouse button allows you to drag around, and pressing delete on the number pad zooms you back in on the currently selected object. You'll see in the scene there's also a light and a camera. They're not important for what we're going to do, but what I will do is I'm just going to download and put in a picture as a reference. So let's just do that very quickly. And the easiest way to do that is simply to find your image and to drag and drop it from a folder. So if I go to my folder, which you can't see, I will just find the image and then drop it on the screen. And I've just got it here, so now if I drop it, to me at the moment I'm not using this as any kind of accurate reference picture. It's just an idea of what we're trying to aim towards, so it doesn't matter about placing it or scaling it really. I can scale it by grabbing it and doing this, but that's not super important. So now we've got this cube and we want to make this scenery piece. So first of all, we need to think about what we're going to do. We need to make a concrete base. We need a tank. We need a base for the tank. And what we can't see from behind it, but which we will really need, is some kind of way to get into it. So I'm just going to start by taking the cube. I'll zoom out a little bit and press S. And I'm just going to scale it along the Y-axis by hitting Y. Scaling it along the Y-axis. I'm just playing around really, and then S and X, and I'll scale it along the X-axis to get roughly the kind of shape that I want. Now I'm going to rotate round to the side, and one of the things that's important in Arma is to make sure that you have got plenty of model that goes below the ground level. We'll count this green line as the ground level for this situation, and so in this we can see at the moment it goes 1 meter below the ground. So I'm going to flip it over, hit tab to get to object mode, and I'm going to hit control tab to get to face select mode. Select the bottom face. I'm going to hit 3 on the number pad key, so I'll go back to side view, E to extrude, and then I'm going to go and I'm just going to drag it down. I'm going to add quite a bit. I think probably, you know what, my mouse cursor gone. I'm going to add about 3 meters extra. Right, so that's got us our foundation. So let's go back so we can see our block and our image. Now we can see in this image that the wall here is not straight, it goes inwards slightly. So if we take a look at the side view again, we've gone up 1 meter straight. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the top face back into side view, hit E to extrude again, and then Z to extrude it on the Z, and I'm going to go up just roughly what I think it looks like. It's not a measured thing I'm doing, this is just sort of stylistic really. Now I think that looks probably about right. I'm going to do something else actually quickly. If you tab out and then go to Shift A and add a plane, this is a flat face, you won't see it now because our block covers it. I'm going to hit S for scale and maybe 40 to scale it up quite big. Right, so now we've got a ground plane, just helps us to kind of compare the picture and what we've got. So now we've got this, and I've got my top section again, the top face selected, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it, but I'm going to lock it so it doesn't scale on the Z axis, which is up or down. So I hit Shift Z. Now it's only going to scale X and Y, and I just move the mouse in a bit to get that sort of inset there, something like that. That's about right. And I'm going to hit E again to extrude and scale again and lock it on the Z again, and I'm going to scale in this inner face to create the wall. Now you'll see it hasn't scaled uniformly, so if I hit 7 to get into top view I can now scale it on the X axis to get the walls the same thickness. There we go. So what we've got now is we've now got the block. As we can see, we've got the shape, the basic shape, but we haven't got the wall going up or down. So we're going to hit extrude again and then Z to lock it on the Z axis and go down to make that wall. There we are. And there is our section so far. Now we have one small or two small issues. The first is we've got no door to get in, and the second is there's this little platform here where the guy is standing, and we want to try and replicate both of those. So I'm going to hit Control R to put in a loop cut, scroll the mouse wheel to get to, and then click to set them, press S to scale these two and Y, and scale them in on themselves until they look about right compared to the picture. There we go. Now what I'm going to do next is take this face and I'm going to extrude it out on the X to roughly get that front section there that's got the eagle on. That maybe looks a bit long. And it's quite difficult to tell in the picture, but I think it all slopes out upwards again like the concrete. And actually when I get closer to this, you can see there is a, it's actually not a line at all. I thought this was a line around, but there's not. So what we can do is we can go to edge select, press the control tab, we'll select that edge, delete the edge and see what happens. Delete won't work, so let's dissolve the edge, which removes the edge but leaves everything else. And now we've got, that looks kind of okay, but we want to take these faces and make it a bit bigger, because we don't have enough slope on the edges now quite. There we go, that's a bit better, happy with that. Then we have got a problem here, which is we forgot to extrude this face, but that's no problem, because we can just do this. Well, cheat. Extrude it to the same place roughly, because it gives me a chance to show you something else we could do, which is we go to vertex mode, select these two vertices, press Alt M to merge at center. Do the same here, Alt M to merge at center, Now we've joined those two things together, but we've got in the middle here, if we hit Z for wireframe mode and go switch back to face mode, you can see we've got these faces that we don't want in there, so we can delete those faces. Or that face. Let's fix that problem briefly. Let's drag this face out a bit to get a bit more of an angle on the front of this. And then this edge to drag this out together so it lines up with the rest. Okay, so we've roughly got this bit now. The reason we continue this on underneath is so that, like, the problem with Arma is that the terrain's not flat like a plane. It goes up and down, and for larger buildings and objects, you have to add foundation to stop you having holes underneath the models when you place them. Right, now we're going to do the door, and we have something of a problem, but not really. We need to make a doorway here, or a way to get in. We've got a line here, but if we delete this face and this face and this face, we haven't got an easy way to join them up. So I'm going to hit side view and go to Z, and we can see where the bottom of that inset we created for the wall is. And if I hit Ctrl R, I can add a loop cut into that object there, move it up to the same height, and then hit Z, and now you see we've got a line runs all the way around at the same height as the internal one. Then delete these faces, hit delete faces. Now go back to edge mode, select two edges and hit F, and that will fill the hole. If you hit Alt, it will select the whole of that hole there, and hit F and Alt again and F, and they're all now joined up. Now part of me thinks we should really straighten that up, so let's go to top view, hit vertex mode. Select these two vertices, hit Z so we can see a grid underneath, so we can just see when it's straight. Scale it by the Y. Scale it by Y, and that'll move the two together until we can see it's straight there. And then pick the next two vertices, scale it on the Y until it's lined up with the one there, and scale these on the Y until they are also lined up. And what we've got now is an entry in that's lined up, but as we said before, 3 and 1, so this is 3 and this is 1 on the number pad. It gives us the different views. If we take this edge, hit Alt, selects the whole edge, and hit 1. I'm just going to move this out until the angle is about the same all the way down. Right. Now we said we've got a problem. We've got this foundation. We need to build a ramp so that they can get into there anyway. So let's take this face and this face and extrude it. We're not going to extrude it much, but just a bit. So we've got a little bit of an entry. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this face here and we're going to drag it out until hit G to move and X to lock it on the X axis, and we're going to move it till the ramp looks at a relatively sensible angle. Right, now we take the bottom edge, hit 1 again so we can see, and do the same G and X to move that bottom edge. It looks stupid and hopefully most of the foundation you never see, but you put it there just in case somebody decides to stick it on a hill and you don't have a hole. Now if we take a look at our picture now, that has taken not so long, and we're at the stage now where in low poly mode that bottom is basically done. So Let's do the cylinder just to finish. Control A for a new object, hit cylinder. Now it's in the middle there somewhere because it placed it where the cursor was, so hit Z, you can see it. If you hit G and Z, we can drag it up. We can rotate it by hitting R, and X to rotate around the X axis. Hit 90 to rotate it 90 degrees, and then S to scale and Y to scale it on the Y axis. So it's about the same sort of proportions roughly as the one in the picture. Maybe that's a bit too long. And then I'm going to scale it again until the size is about right. There we go. And then hit G and Z so it doesn't move up and down too much. I'm going to stick it about the corner. Now, the problem is when we do this, you realise that what you see in a picture is often not actually so useful when it comes to it, because we've now got a fuel tank in the middle of the way on. Now you could say, well, that's okay because it provides cover getting on, and you could leave it like that and say it was just what it's supposed to be. Or you could rotate it round. You can modify it slightly, it doesn't really matter, but for the sake of this anyway, just to show, I'm going to select these two ends. I'm going to hit E again to extrude, and it'll extrude both of them, and S and Y to scale it on the Y, and it pulls both ends out, so you're working equally, you're doing it at the same time. S shift Y so it won't stretch along the Y axis, and I can start to curve in the rounded ends. I'm going to do it once more. I'm going to hit E again to extrude and enter, and then S and Y to drag it out a bit more, not as far this time because I want it more like rounded, and then S shift Y to lock it on the Y so it won't. There we go, there's our rounded end. Now there's a cap on the top, there's a cap on the end, and the easiest way to do that would be to make a new cylinder, but that means dragging it up and stuff. And what I quite often do is just select a face, hit Shift D, right, that copies it. If you hit Y, it removes it from the current mesh, so it's no longer part of the object. Now let's just go back a couple of steps. Right, so we were here. I'm going to scale it on the Y axis so it goes in. We've got a rounded end. Now if I select this and hit Shift D to duplicate and hit enter, it's still a normally it's still attached, but it's not. You can hit Y to make sure it's not attached anyway. Now I can extrude it on the Y axis, select it all by hitting L, which selects that new mesh we've created, rotate it on the X by 90 again. This has got it on for the top one here. GZ to drag it up. I'm going to scale it to about the right size. I'm going to hit GY to drag it along here, GZ again to get it to the top. There we go. GY. It was right near the end on that one, wasn't it? So there's our cap on the end. Now you can see on the cap it's stepped. So I'm going to take this face, hit E to extrude, SZ to lock it so it doesn't scale on the Z axis. This is the outer ring with the bolts, which is actually the wider part. Then it goes up again, so E again to extrude, Z to go up, goes up, how far? Can't see my picture, not that far. Then hit delete to get a bit closer because it's annoying if you extrude, hit enter, S space Shift Z. S, Shift Z. This was smaller, and then E again and Z to go up. And there's our cap for the top there. Looks about right. And then there is one on the end too. It's a bit simpler, so let's take this face again. Shift D, enter, and G, Y. Right, we're just to check we're free. Okay, we're going to scale it to about the right size, which was quite small. Extrude it on the Y. Hit L, then G to move it. Shift Y so it doesn't move on the Y axis. Oh, I can't tell from the picture, is it? It's not in the middle, is it? Is it in the middle? I don't know. I think it's offset to. Oh, it's probably looks better offset as well. Something like that. And then we just need to push it back into the object a tiny bit, like that. There we go. So that's the tank. Now we've got one more thing, or two more things to do, which is the two supports underneath. We're not going to worry about the detail too much at this stage. So I'm going to take this face here, Shift D to copy it, G, Z just to make sure it's loose. Yeah, okay. I'm going to extrude it on the Z axis, and I'm going to scale it on the X axis. Because if you see, remember from the picture, they are concrete blocks, but they're not straight. Right, now I'm going to scale the whole thing now. So I hit L to select it all. S. I'm going to move it 1. Z. G. X. Move it down because it needs to be on the bottom there, like that. Okay. So there is our concrete support, and to me it looks a bit too wide, so I'll narrow it off a bit. That looks better. And then move it to about the right position, just somewhere there roughly. Shift D to copy it and hit Y to copy it on the Y axis. There we are. Now the last thing then we've got to do is these two metal supports, and you can see the bottom is flat, the side is sort of flat, and then it curves with the tank. So while I might be tempted to copy part of the tank and use it, I think in reality what's going to be better is to take a face, copy this, scale it so it's longer, because it's longer in the picture too, and actually that tells us something about these, which is that these are too long at the moment. So I've got that there now. I'm going to select this again, yes, scale it on the X so they're a bit shorter, because they need to be narrower than the tank, because this comes out, you can see it comes out a bit further than the tank, but not much. So S, X, right, that's that. Now extrude it upwards, select it, hit delete to get a bit closer, SY to scale it narrow, because you can see from here that it's narrower than the concrete. And we've got a stylistic decision to make, because it doesn't have to be a support like this, because what goes inside the tank doesn't get seen. So in theory we could just be really cheaty, hit scale it on the x-axis like this, extrude it this way, maybe still a little bit longer just to get the width. and then come down a bit there, hit extrude again, hit S, X, and move these in. Right, or we can put in the curve. It goes up a little bit higher still. Doesn't go all the way up, so that's fine. Okay, so what's inside the tank, if you can see, is this big shape here. But it doesn't actually matter in this case because we won't see it. I mean, it's not ideal, and if you were wanting to do it properly, you'd make the shape some one side and you duplicate it and copy it to the other, but for this it doesn't actually matter. So I'm also going to take the bottom, I can't put the face, I'll just take the edge here and an edge here, and S, X. Just going to scale it and just a bit, give it a bit more shape because it just looked a bit dumb. Okay, select this with L, which selects the mesh, Shift D to copy, and then Y to copy on the Y. Stick that in the middle there, and that's that second support. And that, at the moment, because we're not going to make a ladder on here and a platform for somebody to climb on, probably, because nobody'd ever use it, is where we would leave it. Because if you take a look at this picture, things like rivet lines and the joint lines between the plates, we could do all of it using normals when we paint it. So I would leave it like that. What I would do actually is copy this, Shift D, and then I am going to scale it, but not on the Y. I'm making the pipes on the top. Hit delete to get back to about roughly where it is. GZ there somewhere. GX, pull it out here. We've already got some line loop cuts in here that we can use. So we've got this one and this one. If you hold Shift and Alt, you can select both rings. Then scale it, but not on the Y. You see it's moving it into the flat, right? Then we can take this one and this one, scale it on the Y, so you pull it up really close to this. We're going to do the opposite now, so scale and Shift Y, we're going to drop it in, and there's the first of the two pipes. The only thing we might want to change is to make this bit longer, so S, Y, because they look longer in that picture, and probably the pipe itself is too long, so we could just take a Z. Actually, what we need to do is hide the tank, so hit L on the tank and H to hide it, hit Z to get the end of this, and I'm going to select all the faces with B for box select, go back. Now I'm going to hit Alt H to get the tank back, hit Shift L to deselect the tank, G, Y, and that looks a bit better, I think. About, oh no, still shorter. Oop. You see what happened? I forgot to deselect this face. There. There's pipe 1 and copy it, G, just going to randomly just hit G and get it to about sort of like there. There we go, and there is our object. Now, as I said, practically speaking, we don't know how it will work, and we've got no model, so the next thing to do is to import a, well, let's go to object mode. So import a character that is scaled, and I've got one here. I'll put that somewhere where you can find it as well. This one. Hit delete. Right. Control Alt Shift C and origin to geometry puts the origin of where he is with him, and rotate 180. I'm just trying to get the guy in the front to start with. To give us an idea of if the scale's roughly okay. I mean, so then we've got the issue that we know that Games Workshop's not true scale, so we need to make something that looks roughly human, sensible, and useful in game. So I'm going to copy this dude and just drop him down to the ground. His feet start to disappear or stop. Okay, I'm going to move him a bit closer to the wall just so we can see. But so what this tells me, if I go to side view, is you might just be able to see over it if you were a human character in Arma 3 and you were here. You might just, you probably wouldn't see a great deal. So the first thing I do is take this and I'm just going to hit scale, nothing else. Scale everything just down a little bit, not too much. There we go. Now it's just around about his neck height. Right, so he's got good body protection. Probably wouldn't be able to shoot over it. And that's where your decision making comes in. What do you want to use it for? How high do you really want it? So I would probably scale it more. And now at about this height, you would be able to shoot over it. If we drop him down, it's now looks more like the size of this guy here, still possibly a little bit big. And copy the dude again. Put him down there. The tank is taller than a person. So it would give cover, and it is lower than the wall, so you couldn't shoot underneath it. And then I would just go and save it somewhere where I can remember, and that's it. To add it as an Arma object, you need to have Arma tools installed. Hit N to get the tools on the side, and Arma 3, and then there's the settings for it here, but that's for another video. This is not what I want this really, but I'm just saving it. Okay, I hope it's useful, and I will see you soon.